Life and death, it's all a dance. Talking love and giving chance. Laughs and tears, we're here to share. Join us now, we're always there.
Hi, Jenna.
Hey, Noelle, how are you today?
Living the dream. How are you?
I am great. Great.
Who are we having on our podcast today?
Today we are having Carri on, and I have known her for quite a while. She has 2 boys, one of which has special needs, and she's gonna talk to everybody about just him growing up and the services he has gotten and the support she has found, and she just has the absolute best attitude, and I think it'll be great for maybe new parents or caregivers that just a child is just diagnosed to see that there is hope.
I really hope my internet connection is good today to have this conversation with Carri.
I hope it is too. I guess we'll have to see. When is Beth coming on?
When are you coming on? Never. Suddenly someone's speechless.
Yeah, yes, you are. Hello, Carri.
Hi, honey. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
This is Noelle, and she's 10 minutes behind us on the mic over
Sorry.
there. I don't know what's happening.
Okay.
5 hours ahead in time and 10 minutes behind.
You're good.
Oh,
Sure.
You're
perfect.
perfect right now. Let's hurry up and do the entire thing at this moment.
Perfect.
Noelle, are you with us?
I think so. Is it still
Okay, hear
delayed?
your voice and see your frozen face. Noelle, this is Carri. Carri, Noelle.
Hi, Carri.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
If I'm not 10 minutes behind, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a mother. I'm married. I have 2 wonderful boys, and 21 and 19. My youngest has special needs. He has autism and verbal apraxia. So that occupies a lot of my time and priorities, but I'm also a real estate agent in the Pittsburgh market. So I stay busy. That's pretty much my background.
I mean, that's a good chunk. I mean, you're one of the busiest people I know, which is and you make it look easy, which is amazing.
Well, you got to stay busy. There's lots to do.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. So, do you wanna give us some of the background with Casey growing up?
So, Casey's 19, but we actually got him diagnosed with autism when he was 2. So, and I hate that whole functioning, high functioning, low function, right? He's nonverbal. Um, how much of that is from apraxia? How much of that is autism? The kid understands a ton, right? He's had speech therapy since he was 2 years old. PT therapy. I mean, just an enormous amount of therapy. But he's just a sweet kid and has a great disposition. And we're in the heart of puberty. Hopefully, we'll be getting through that. Which for parents with littles, I don't even want to scare you with that, but that is another chapter you have to come across. Nobody really warned you of that. So yeah, he's doing really well. He's a happy kid, which is how I kind of gauge how successful his life is. He's pretty happy. So
He is very happy.
yeah.
And your oldest, tell us a little bit about Jackson
Oh,
just so
sure.
he's not left out.
So Jackson, the poor siblings of the special needs kids.
I know.
Jackson he's 21. This is his senior year of college, and he's doing great. I mean, he's an awesome kid. I'm really blessed with him. He has his history major, and he's looking to teach in Japan next year.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
he's looking. He needs to. Yeah, I mean, he has to get his master's. When you have a history degree, you got to go on
Right.
and get an advanced degree in that. So he's taking a little break and he wants to go and explore Asia, and I think that's a pretty safe way. Japan's a pretty safe country.
That is awesome.
These kids are all over the place.
Yeah, and where are we, Carrie? Where are we? I'm always like I was like, "Don't worry, you'll find me here. I'm not going anywhere."
No, you kids explore.
Yep, you have the time of your lives. We'll be here waiting for you.
Tell me all about it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, Carrie, what I'm wondering is from the beginning of Casey's journey with as far as when he was diagnosed and growing up,
Mhm.
where are you at as far as how you felt back then
Oh.
and how you feel now?
Okay, so that's a great question, Jenna, because I think, when he was first diagnosed, your world crashes, right? Like there's this intense sadness. I felt that. I don't know other people do, but I just kind of felt like like everything I had hoped for him was not going to happen. And we had to work through that. I gave myself 24 hours to be sad because that's really all the time I had. I gave myself 24 hours. This wasn't what I had planned for him, and the hopes and dreams you had when you look at your baby, that they would have to have that, like that struggle. And I think like as I have matured through this process, because when you start, it's a great question because you're not who you were when they were diagnosed, and they take you through that journey. Like they walk you through a growth process. And so now, you know I realize that every child will disappoint their parent somehow. I mean, it's inevitable because kids just can't live up to our expectation. I mean, it's at some point your child's not going to do something that you kind of hope that they would do. We were blessed to experience that at an early age. And I say blessed because everything he's done has been a joy. So everything he's been able to achieve and accomplish. Whereas if it was a neurotypical kid, you might be like, well, yeah, that's what you should be doing. But with Casey, we're able to kind of celebrate all of those milestones and joys and the things we never thought, thinking back, like the kid gets in the car, buckles his seatbelt, does everything he needs to do. Well, when he was like 7, he wasn't doing that. So, and when they're 7, you're kind of like, is this going to be my life? Do I have to keep buckling, and then they mature like other kids do, so then you start to celebrate. He buckled in his seatbelt. You would never do that with a neurotypical kid.
Right.
You get some really cool, um I don't know, like you just get some really cool like celebrations with these kids.
So I think a lot of people, and I myself, before I was more aware of autism and anything around that, I thought, oh, they're not going to be able to meet milestones. They're not going to be able to enjoy being with friends or being with family. Um, it's a shame that I thought that way, but I didn't know. So you mentioned that he is able to do a lot of things. I think that's important to get out there, especially if because I can't be the only one that didn't have a full understanding. Um,
Right.
I think we do more now than we did when he was diagnosed, probably.
Especially if the child is nonverbal, right? Like so many kids have like they're so different. I mean, we call it a spectrum. But a kid who's nonverbal versus maybe someone who's a little bit higher functioning that maybe just needs a little bit of like help interacting with other people like in a social setting, they're vastly different. Maybe their brains think similarly, but my nonverbal kid can't tell me that. So but he understands. Like the crazy thing is that he understands what you're saying to him. So even though he can't really communicate verbally, not that well, he understands what I'm saying. I'm like, Casey, go get your shoes and grab your coat. He's going to grab his shoes and his coat, and the kid's not, so there's so much independence with them that when you're in the moment and they're 2 years old or 3 years old, whatever, whenever they're diagnosed, even the kids who are the lower functioning kind of kids with the air quote, they really mature. They mature, they grow, therapy works. I cannot emphasize. I don't know where he would be if we didn't have the early intervention that we had for him. That was so critical because he was getting almost 40 hours a week, and parents sometimes they deny it. And then they're denying their kid the opportunity. That's the greatest period of growth. They really got to get therapy in there early, if anything, because once he gets into school, or she gets into school, right? Like they can do miraculous things with the kids, especially if they need a special, like one of our special schools. But getting them early, I think, makes the difference between how independent these kids are.
Do you think you had support with his pediatrician at the time as far as finding the therapies? Was that available to
Oh,
you?
yeah. 100%. His pediatrician did not mess around. She was amazing. She said she'd listen to me. I think if you have an intuition as a parent, I don't know that I had an intuition. I just knew there were certain milestones he wasn't reaching. I think it doesn't hurt to have an expert take a look at your kid. That doesn't hurt. If your kid's okay, that's great. but it doesn't hurt to have that looked at early on, knowing what we know about early intervention, and the types of resources that are available are just unbelievable.
I think Jenna mentioned the process of or it being more commonly spoken of now. What was the process like? Because you said he's 20?
19.
Okay, so when he was first diagnosed, do you feel like the conversation about autism and, like, the spectrum has, like, widely opened up? Because I feel like you hear it more now.
Well, I think you're going to experience it differently in different parts of the country. I'm fortunate to be in an area where the hospitals are phenomenal and there's a lot of research and advancements. And I think that probably in different parts of the country, you're going to have a different experience, maybe, especially if it's an area that you don't have great access to healthcare or health professionals. But I didn't. I had great doctors for him. They listened. I hear people having to fight. I've never had to fight, and it's probably because he does present as being special, right? He presents that way, and he's so sweet that it's hard to not want to give him what he needs because he's just an angel. So even with the doctors now, I did have a little trouble, Jenna, surprisingly, with our children's hospital, and I'm hoping that that has changed. I mean, I don't want it to be like all roses. It wasn't. I had to fight. I had to search for what I needed. So, like, I would go. You would think children's hospital would have be the experts, but I found that a lot of people. I had to search for it.
Yeah, I before I went into working with the foster system, I did developmental psych. So a lot of the children, I would go in home and do part of the 70 hours you're talking about a week and work with the children. Um, and I did find that a lot with parents, their hesitation in reaching out or wanting the therapies to start because it's almost like the realization like I have to admit this. Like if I okay this therapies, I'm admitting it. And I've had many conversations, exactly what you just said, just the benefits of it. What's the worst that could happen in this scenario? He's having interaction with another person that cares for him, if that's the worst that happens. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people don't. This is what's crazy to me. A therapist is willing to come into your house and work with your child one on one. And some
Right.
parents don't want that. And because I don't know, they think their house isn't clean enough or this isn't a house guest. This is
Right.
somebody who's there for your child, and don't allow I don't know what it is, ego or nervousness or I don't know what it is. But parents have to kind of put their kids' needs first. I've heard it so many times. I think it's shocking that some parents won't let therapists in because of their home situation. I'm like, they don't care about your house.
We do not care
They
about the
don't
house. I
care.
don't
They're
think
not
there's
judging you. Like,
at all.
honestly, people don't deny your kid because of your house.
I went into many households where uh, the doors and windows were kind of boarded up, and that's where I went and worked with the child, and I treated that child the same way I would have going into the nicest house you've ever been to. And I found many times those families are so proactive, then that they love and they respect that the people that come into the home, that they're willing to come into their home. But you're so right. Like that's the last thing a therapist or
Yeah.
counselor or anything is coming into your home care about.
What is the relationship like between your 2 sons?
Oh,
Oh,
good.
great. So it's great. In some ways, I have two children that are only children. Does that make sense? In some ways,
Mhm.
I've had to raise them separately because my oldest son, he's rather advanced in a lot of things and has a lot of curiosities. So we would want to take him places that wouldn't be appropriate for our youngest son, right? So growing up, like Jackson, my oldest had to make a lot of compromises because if it was an environment Casey didn't like, we'd have to leave early. So we tried to balance giving Jackson some quality time. Sometimes we'd have to get somebody to watch our youngest Casey so that Jackson could have an opportunity where he wouldn't have to leave early. like whether it be the museum or because I always had memberships to all of like the zoo, the museums, all of it. And I did the memberships because if we did have to leave early, we could always come back. It wasn't like a big deal, but my oldest son loves him so much. Like they're 2 years apart, and and the youngest loves him. Like that's his buddy. So because it's just the two of them, they're great. They've got a good bond.
I love that you said that you take the time for each of them, and that's just relatable. I think when you have multiple children in general, I think the things you're saying, a lot of them are relatable to somebody who doesn't have a child maybe on the spectrum in general, giving that child a different like,
Right.
separating the children, doing one with the other one because they have different interests.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times we see that as like, I can't bring him there or whatever. I might not be able to bring one of my children to the same place as an older sibling or a younger sibling. So I think it's so important to just see those parallels, and it's not so much about maybe how Casey is as opposed to just they're two different children.
Yeah, that and setting him up for success too, because if I know the environment's not going to be good for Casey, I don't like forcing him into something that's going to make him uncomfortable. Because I could really
Right.
throw him off for a couple days, like that could be bad for him. And so, I don't avoid going places, but I like to set him up for success. So if I'm like, this isn't good for him, but my oldest really wanted to do it, I just had to make it either we separated and my husband took him, right? Like we didn't want Jackson to go without because he had a special brother, that was just a priority for us. That's one of the reasons, Jenna, we didn't have more than two kids. Because I
Right.
was like, if we had a third one, I was like, how much attention could we
Right.
I
Right.
didn't want another child, like, I really was really important that we gave him that time. Yeah.
What about for you? Did you get the support you needed?
Uh no, but I was okay, let me go back. So my husband is great. And the one thing that we did really well early on was we never blamed each other for our child's whatever was going on with Casey. So we never said like if you would only or why didn't you? We never said those statements. That was an early on agreement because your kids are your kids. It's not my child doesn't have special needs because I didn't do something. And
Right.
so my husband has never accused me of not doing enough or not being there. And I've never accused him. And I think that's the biggest thing is you have to recognize in your spouse, it's not their fault. Your child's behavior or situation isn't your spouse's fault. Um, Even if you're not human and maybe you do want them to do more, but that their behavior is not as a result of your spouse. So you can't like blame
Right.
them and get in fights over that. But so he was great. Now, unfortunately, like I didn't live near my family. I don't live near my family. Um, so I feel like we could have had more support. Our church was significant for us. We have a special needs ministry at our church, and that
Wow.
was really big. Like 75% of people in America divorce when they have special needs like child. It's like 75% divorce rate. And I think Jenna, to the heart of that, it's because they don't have the support. And one, I think you're not seeking it out. I didn't seek it out as much. We are now,
Okay.
like I pay for people to watch him. I'm blessed enough that I can do that. I
Right.
recognize that as a real need, a continuing need. But there's a lot of places that offer respite. My church offers free respite for special needs kids, and their siblings can come. So I
Oh,
think
that's nice.
yeah, and you don't have to be a member of the church. They do it for anybody. It's for anybody. So I think like the services are there. You do have to be proactive about it though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's hard. I think that's with, like, any kind of services with kids, it's you kind of have to dig
Yeah.
and find them, and unfortunately, some people don't have the resources, like you said, to be able to
Yep.
find
Yep.
their people, and that's always been a big not a concern for me, but it breaks my heart for people that can't, like, literally have to give up every part of their life because they don't have the support, um,
Yeah.
which I'm glad you have that. Carrie, do you wanna mention Lori? We had someone on who was talking about breast cancer the other day who's a survivor.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, my sister-in-law, she was my sister, basically, my husband's sister. Uh, she had metastatic breast cancer, passed away 5 years ago. Can you believe it? 5 years ago?
I cannot believe it's 5 years ago.
Easy. It's been 5 years. And, I think as women, we have been told that if we've been told so much about early detection, right? Like I think my whole life has been like early detection, early detection, early detection. And yeah, we got it. But so the majority of people who donate are donating to awareness. For me, that's an issue because like awareness doesn't cure breast cancer, right? If you detect breast cancer super early, like your stage one, you still have a 30% chance of developing stage four breast cancer, which is incurable. If you detect it at stage three, you still have a 30% chance of
Right,
developing stage four. It's the same percentage regardless of when you detect it. Now, your
right,
treatment, they change, obviously, like the severity of your treatments obviously change. But they're doing some amazing, amazing research right now, which is so awesome to see. And I think, like, I don't think most people realize if you have stage four, it's incurable.
right.
That's it. Like if it's metastatic, incurable. And
Right.
it doesn't matter if you get detected early, right? That and that just seems so crazy to me because we are told so frequently to check early.
Right. Tell me about what's the organization that Lori was a part of and very active in?
Metaviver. Yeah, it's a crazy name. It's called Metaviver, right? Like metastatic survivor, Metaviver. And 100% of the donations for that goes to research. Like 100% of it goes to research. It's an all volunteer organization. Um and they're doing wonderful things here in Pittsburgh. I mean, they're developing a vaccine. This is the new stuff. Like they're developing a vaccine for breast cancer here in Pittsburgh. Lori's doctor is doing that. Doctor,
Really?
yes, it's like crazy cool. What you want to see, kind of stuff, because they still don't know. There's so many different markers to breast cancer. Like there's how you treat breast cancer depends on like different things, right? Like no two people are the same. So Lori just had a really nasty version of it. It was so aggressive and nasty. Um, and the scary part is we're seeing more and more young women develop breast cancer, and we don't know
Right,
why. I mean, she was in her late 30s, and when your cells replicate, when you're young, your cells replicate quicker. Normally women develop it in their late 60s, 70s, where your cell replication is like slower, so they have a
right.
chance to treat the cancer. But when you're young, it's so aggressive. So they're trying to figure out why are more and more women developing this at a young age. And we had no family history. Like she has no family history of it. So some of this research is really incredible and it does support early detection, ironically, because if you get it early enough, then you could be a candidate for this vaccine. So
Oh,
it's,
is that what it is? Okay.
yeah, if you catch it early enough and you have certain markers, and you're like a candidate for this vaccine. And I'm like, that's unbelievable to me. I mean, I believe it. It's like an answer to prayers, really.
So this vaccine you're talking about, you have to have breast cancer. It's not something that you take before you don't get vaccinated to prevent breast
Correct.
cancer.
That's my
Okay,
understanding of it, Jenna. That's my understanding. Yeah.
okay.
It's brand new and it's happening here at in at UPMC and like Pitt. So
Oh,
it's just
fantastic.
I know. And these doctors are so smart. They're so smart. They just need the funding for research because then they can do the clinical trials. Right? So that's the whole game is getting the funding so that they can do these clinical trials so that we can see what's going to work and not work. That's why it's like we know to check ourselves. We need money going to research. We need to push this money. I'm not saying none, but it's like we got to push this money into research where we can save people's lives.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree completely. But I wanted to talk about that organization because I do think
They're
they're
great.
fantastic.
They are great. And they help women what's really also great about it is that they help them, like, not just in their treatments, but like their everyday life. Because you got to think these
Mm,
women can't really go to work.
right,
When you have stage 4, some women do work, but you know, like they're going to the hospital weekly. It,
right.
like these, it's very intense and it's hard on the kids. If they have children, it's so hard on those kids. So, I love Medivivor. They're on my regular donation. They're like
Yeah,
they're
they're
it for
fantastic.
me. Yeah, they're great, man. And they're all over. That's not just Pittsburgh. They're all over.
We'll be sure to link that
Yep.
on here. Everybody can make their donations there this year, their yearly donation to Metaviver because they are fantastic.
What was the relationship like with your son and your sister-in-law?
Ah, Lori. Um, so I mean, it was amazing, right? Because Lori's like that kind of person. She's very sweet, and there were two people that would break my rules, right? Like I like him having sugar, no soda, none of that stuff, right? And Lori always broke those rules, and that was the aunt. She loved
The
him.
fun aunt.
Yeah, she loved him. She gave him Coke. He wasn't supposed to have soda, but she didn't care, because and Casey loved her. I mean, like they love each other, very very close. We are, but we were a very very close family. I recently lost my aunt this weekend, and I was explaining it to Casey, and I was like, and ironically, this other aunt also gave Casey Coke. Like, it's like,
Oh,
yes,
really?
uh, he loves it. He loves if he could get Mountain Dew, he'll drink it. Um,
Of course he does.
Terrible for you, terrible. We don't have like a lot of junk food or sugar in our house because it's just bad for you, and
Right.
we don't have that. Uh,
Right.
but when he can get his hands on it, he wants it. And so I was like, buddy, Aunt Donna's with Aunt Lori up in heaven, probably drinking Coke together.
Oh,
Oh.
And so
I love that.
yeah, I mean, like, I try to remind him, you know, I try to remind him of her, all the little things she used to do. Yeah.
So who would you say other than you and Andy, who does he kind of gravitate towards in your family?
So my mom and dad, uh, and like he is spoiled. He is a spoiled kid and loves my mom and dad. He loves Andy's mom too, like Andy's parents, but it's not the same. I think it's not the same than your
Right.
mom's parent. Your mom's mom.
You said your family doesn't live close by?
No, they're about 6 hours away With driving.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in Indianapolis, like south of Chicago. Um, I try to if she doesn't come out, my mom and dad don't come out, I try to get out there. I'm used to the drive, so it's
Right.
important.
That's still a lot. Another thing for you.
Gosh, it's a lot, man. But they come out a lot more in the summer. When it gets in the winter time, the roads are unpredictable, so we try to.
Yeah, nobody really wants to go anywhere.
No, but I have to because I'm like, this life is short. You have to be with your family.
I love that.
Yeah,
You are exactly
yeah,
right.
you have to.
So, what is Casey in school?
Yes. So he goes to a special needs school, like a school for special needs kids. He went to a typical school till about first grade, and then we realized like he could have stayed there. He could have stayed in
Right.
the typical school, but I didn't feel like it was having him in the class. Inclusion didn't help him. That was not
Right.
helping him learn. I mean, it was great. They welcomed him in the classroom. It just didn't, his sensory needs were so much that the typical school really couldn't meet his sensory needs, even though they're really good. They just couldn't. So we decided to go to a special needs school, and he can stay there till he's almost 20, 21, complete his
Okay.
21st year. Um, and they're amazing. Like, really great. They push him.
I mean, they're the most amazing people. I could not even imagine the patience.
Yeah.
You have to absolutely, it's one of those careers that I feel like you're born to do. So, looking back now, what would you tell yourself if you could, um, going through this journey? What would you tell yourself at that beginning part that you know now that you didn't know then?
I think you just have to, like, it's going to be okay, right? If he talks, if he doesn't talk, it's okay. If he, what really matters in life, my husband helped me to get this perspective. I don't know, like, not early on, probably like when Casey was about 10, and we realized, okay, speech therapy, his receptive skills were very good, but his expressive were just below par. And he didn't, he can use an iPad and use those apps and talk for school, but he doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to talk like that. And I think, like, he's not going to be typical, and it's okay, right? He still has quality of life. The most important thing is he's happy, right? He has joy, happiness. I mean, how many people are typical and are miserable in life, right? Like, yeah, he's happy. He enjoys his life. He does the things he likes to do. I try to, my husband, our goal is that he has a rich life, that he fills it with things he likes to do, things that can challenge him a little bit. He loves music, so we try to, like, expose him to as much music as I can, right? So it's okay if they're not typical. That doesn't mean their quality of life isn't great, right? And they can still be significant. Like, you can play a significant role in people's lives. You don't need to be the smartest man or woman in the room, right? Yeah, you have to have the sweetest heart
Thank God.
and, be the most loved. It shows you so much more about who you are when how you interact with somebody like Casey. So it's going to be okay. That's what I would tell myself. Yeah.
Gonna be okay. That actually was the next question I was gonna ask you. So what would you tell to somebody else who's not familiar with autism? Um, and you're walking around, what are you telling somebody else that maybe doesn't understand?
Uh Usually I don't care. I don't care if they understand, but
Right,
if I want
right,
them to understand, right?
right. Or if they ask you, or if they yeah. Yeah, if they approach you asking. I mean, I'd be the same
I
way,
know
but I get
sometimes
what
I
you're
don't.
saying.
Um, so a lot of times most people know about Casey presents as being special, right? He wears headphones when he's out in public and he stims and you know and most people like Jenna from where we live, right, are so sweet about it. They smile, right? Like they
Mm,
smile at him and that little smile puts me at ease. Seeing somebody's little I don't need him to
okay.
acknowledge him or talk to him, but just that smile to me make that actually feels good to me knowing that she's smiling at me or he's that's nice feeling that's all that helps. I think uh if somebody asks me the question or I hear sometimes parents will talk to their kids about him, like if the kids are staring, a lot of the parents trying to explain to you,
Right.
that's like so and so, like, so they're pretty good. I mean, Casey's 6'1" now, so he's kind of hard to miss. And so when he was little, kids were like, "Oh, that's cool. He's a weird kid," right? Now it's like that's a giant, and he's jumping up and down on one foot, right? Like that's weird. That's who he is, and I'm not hiding him. I take him to stores. Yeah. So most of the time, like the parents know, right? Like, but if somebody asks me, I talk more about the apraxia. Yeah, I talk more about the
Okay.
apraxia because it's like he doesn't talk. Like sometimes someone wants to be sweet and talk to him, right? And he won't answer them, and
Right,
I'm
right,
like,
right.
well, it's like if somebody has a stroke and they don't talk, they're like, yeah. I said, because their neural pathways are damaged. They're like, yeah. So that's very similar to how his brain works. Like his neural pathways for speech have been damaged.
How has it been balancing a career with raising your 2 children? Obviously, you have 2 kids. I don't wanna just talk about,
Yeah.
Casey, though he sounds amazing.
Really, really hard. It's hard, like any mom, right, with kids and you have a job. But, being like real estate has allowed me to have a lot of flexibility on my schedule. I think if I had a 9 to 5, that would be really challenging. But because I can schedule time around the kids, so when Jackson would get home from school would be like at 3. So for my clients, I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm booked today from 3 to 6. I have an appointment from 3 to 6." My kids were my appointment. So anytime I had something related to the
Right.
children, unless it was like I had a client like Jenna was a friend and I'd be like, "Hey Jenna, I got to get the kids off the bus." Most clients are great cuz real estate's so relationship based. But if it wasn't somebody like that, I'd be like, "Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. I have an appointment." And I had to schedule that time because it was really important I was there, that I am there for them during that time. So, I think I had to be deliberate. My husband was great. He took up a lot of slack. I didn't do it on my own. He is a great dad, so he did a lot. I think summers were the worst because the kids were home all day, all day long. So, there was a lot of like miracle working with my schedule during those times when the kids were home, where I'd be like, Andy would get home at like 5 and I'd be like, I gotta go to work. So I might work till like 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Was your career something that was already in play prior to your sons being born, or was that something that did you take time away from work, or were you working pretty much consistently through?
Sure. So when he was diagnosed, okay, so it was when when I had kids, I decided to work remotely, right? Because I worked with
Okay.
nonprofits, so I was working from home. I did some consulting work. And then Casey was diagnosed with autism. And I still did some consulting work where I could work from home, like, I don't know, 15 hours a week. It was real minor. It wasn't anything significant because my job was Casey. So, and we chose a lifestyle that we could afford so I could do that. And I know not
Right.
everybody has the luxury of doing something like that, but, for me, it was important. It was really critical that I was there during that time where he was receiving therapies. I mean, it was only like 4 years because once they go to kindergarten, the therapies change, the therapy schedule changes because they're in school during that time. And, I wanted to be home for my oldest. I wanted to be home for Jackson. I wanted him to always have somebody home when he was home. And then when Casey went to kindergarten is when I decided I was going to be a real estate agent. And I thought, you know what, this is a good career because I could still schedule around, right? I could still schedule around my kids. That was the goal. It was
Right.
never to make a ton of money or to be like, make this a big deal. It turned out great for me. But the intention was always this primarily was flexible for our family.
Oh, Carrie, I can't believe I forgot this. Can you please talk about why you're so badass and could beat up anybody that ever approached you? And if I'm ever in a dark alley, you are the person I'm choosing to be walking with. Can't believe I forgot about this. Tell
That's
us
the
what
most
you
important,
do.
like the most interesting thing about me. So I think when I first became a real estate agent, I quickly realized that I would be in places without where I'm going to be with people I don't know, right? And I remember specifically got a call from a man who turned out to be a gentleman. Nothing was wrong with him, but he wanted to see a house, and I was like, oh no, I don't know him. And right, I'm like, so I started taking Krav Maga, which is a self defense system, because I was like, oh, I better, because you can't have a weapon and show houses, right? Because that's weird. You can't have your gun. It's pointless to have a gun and a purse. You're never gonna. We can't even find our keys. You're not gonna get to the.
Right,
So
right,
I decided to. I
right.
became a Krav Maga instructor. So I started training so much. I became an instructor. That was like 12 years ago. So from there, I became an amateur boxer. I do Muay Thai. I'm a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So I like just in general, like the art of fighting, just in general.
Is it glimmer time?
Oh my god. It is. It's glimmer time.
Carrie, In 17 minutes, when my voice finally comes through your speaker, you will learn that we like to come up with a glimmer at the end of our episodes. They are the opposite of a trigger, so it's like something that brought brightness to your day. So, since I'm on a roll and I am talking right now, and I will continue talking because otherwise I don't know when my voice will pick back up, I'm going to start with my glimmer.
Smart.
So, I would say this conversation has been a glimmer for me. My wife is pregnant. I've mentioned this in every single episode. And you always wonder, obviously, the health of your baby and, what could potentially not go according to plan, I'll say. And this has been a great reminder that you take the cards that you're dealt and you make the most of them, and you're a shining example of somebody that loves both of their children, and you're a reminder of the fact that even if on paper a child is not what most people would consider typical or um, what they envision their future to be, that it can still be wonderful. So thank you very much for having this conversation. I can actually hear my voice now and it's very annoying. I'm so sorry.
My glimmer is that for the past 10 minutes, there's been a car beeping in the background, the security, and for someone with ADD, that is like the fact that I was able to carry on a conversation while that was happening, I'm quite impressed with myself, but it just stopped. Right as we're doing this,
Of
it stopped.
course.
So that's my glimmer that the car finally stopped beeping.
Okay. So obviously the podcast is amazing and fun, and this was great. I'm super impressed. But my real glimmer is that I choked out a guy today 3 times in jujitsu. So I made him tap 3 times with a rear naked choke. So that's
You
really
are
my glimmer.
fantastic.
And I get to brag
You
about it on
are
a
fantastic.
podcast.
I mean, people need to like follow you because it's amazing to me the stuff you do.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Life and Death podcast. Please be sure to leave us a review and comment to let us know what you thought of the episode. And don't forget to follow us so you never miss an update. You can email us at lifeanddeathpodcast@gmail.com. You'll find Jenna on Instagram under the handle Jenna Marie Life Coaching, and I, Noelle, can be found at Noelle E. Carlin.
Life and death through ups and downs, finding smiles beyond the frowns. Stay with us, we'll light the way. See you next time, bright and gay.